welcome to Talk of the Town. We're broadcasting live tonight. Haven't been here for a few weeks. My guest was scheduled a number of weeks ago and ended up in the hospital. And thank God he was saved because we need him badly in this town. Please welcome, I regard him as a friend, Plymouth Town Manager, Derek Brindisi.
Hi, Karen. How are you? Thanks for having me. And it's good to be here. It's good to be upright, too.
It's great. I was so upset, Derek. And then you came back for a meeting and you were so thin. Oh.
Yeah, that was, so I got discharged from the hospital on a Sunday, and I came back because we were recognizing Representative Matt Muratori for his 10 years of service. And Matt's a friend.
Yes.
And I said, they will have to drag my lifeless body in there because I need to be there for Matt. Matt's done so much for the town the last 10 years, and prior to that as a select board member, so I really wanted to be there for him, even though I was only a day out of the hospital. So.
I love him. Did you get the letter from him?
The most recent one?
Yeah.
Yes. So he's he's still out there. He's still
working. He's still working it.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, Matt's great. I have to say, and I said it during his ceremony, that my first year as a town manager here, I didn't understand, although I had worked here previous, and I came back 5 years later, there's a lot I missed. And I remember my first or second town meeting, and I was under some heavy gunfire, and I remember Matt texting me saying, take a deep breath, this is what they're focused on. So he has always encouraged me. He has been a person that I could go to for advice.
Yeah.
So, Matt to me is more than a legislator. He's a friend.
He's a friend.
Yeah.
He's just wonderful. He never forgets you, and
right.
Just a wonderful guy. As you are, you're a tremendous town manager. And personally, folks, I watch the selectmen's meeting and watch the town manager, and I don't know how they do it, because what they do is a 24/7-hour job, and to hear some of the people that come up really is very disconcerting. And I understand some frustration, but sometimes it's just off the wall. But you handle it, you're very professional, and it's remarkable to me. Not a lot of people can do it. And I'd like to talk about last night. I have other things, but polling places.
Yes, polling, yeah.
If it was up to me, I wouldn't care if it was 1, 2, 3 polling places. It's fine with me because I vote early. As Kelly said, 53, 55% of the people do.
That's right.
That's a big margin. And the rest go election day or mail-in.
Right.
Right, mail-in or in...
Mail-in or early in person.
Early in person,
Yep.
That's what it's called. And now we're down to 5 polling places. Good. I think it's a good breakup. Talk about that.
Yeah, so, as one of our previous shows that I've come on, I've spent a lot of time talking about the select board for the last 3 years. Every summer comes out with a set of goals and priorities. And this past year, one of their goals was to look at the 14 polling locations and determine whether or not it starts to make sense to condense some of these polling locations. And so last calendar year, we had 5 elections.
Yes.
Started in January, May.
It was hectic.
Right, it was a crazy time. So the town clerk, and we have an elections coordinator now, never had one before, which is great, Tyler. He did a great job presenting.
Oh, I saw him.
Yep,
yes.
He's our elections coordinator. We've never had one before. Part of one of our goals is to make a more efficient town government, and we had lost a position, administrative position, and we used the proceeds from that position to create an election coordinator position.
Excellent.
Which was perfect timing given the fact that we had 5 elections last year. But that office was so busy dealing with the 5 elections, they didn't have time to do the analysis on consolidation. So once we got through the presidential election, the town clerk and the elections coordinator had time to look at the data, look at the geographic spread of our folks that are voting, and then come back with a set of recommendations. And like we always try to do, and I say to the staff, listen, our job is to make recommendations, but to try to give the select board options, right? So then this way they can ask good questions, get the information they need, and select one of those two options. And so Kelly McAuliffe, the town clerk, came back and said, as you pointed out, 53% of our voters, on average, are voting either early in person or mail-in, which means then less than half the percent are actually voting on election day. And so looking at that data, she thought this was a good time to talk about consolidation. And she had two options. One, to consolidate the 18 precincts, which is 14 voting locations, down to 4, or there was another option that had a 5th location, which was South Elementary School. And so I think the initial reaction by the board was, let's just go with 4. But then after a week of receiving phone calls, especially from the folks in Cedarville, they pivoted a little bit and said, listen, maybe 5 is a better decision today. We can always go to 4 down the road. Or, I even heard some folks say, maybe it shouldn't be 4, maybe it should be 2.
Right.
But baby steps. And so last night, the board, again, amended their vote. Instead of having 4 voting locations in May, they're going to move to 5 voting locations. And part of that process is the state law requires the town clerk to send postcards to all of the voters whose polling location will change. So everybody will put on a notice.
Yeah.
And she's going the extra mile, and she's going to give instructions on how folks can request a mail-in ballot. Mm-hmm. And if you request a mail-in ballot, we will mail it to your home. You can cast your vote, put it in the envelope, and mail it back to us. You don't even have to leave your home. So the argument that we're disenfranchising certain populations is not true, because you can vote from your sofa nowadays. Right. So we think as a whole that we're making it easier for folks to vote, not making it a barrier for folks to vote.
I thought it was excellent, and I also thought for the selectmen, it proves that they do listen.
That's right.
That they are adaptable, and that's what they did.
That's a good point, yes.
I appreciate that. If people said, keep the 4 or the 5 or whatever it was, and I mean, it wasn't 1 like a lot of towns did.
Right. A lot, and and some of the selectmen last night reflected on what other communities have done. Right. And I think Selectman Mahoney had said Pembroke went from, I think it was 5 locations down to 1 location. They opened up a brand new community center, and they says, okay, all polling locations are going to be right here. And so now anybody in Pembroke votes in 1 location. Marshfield also, I want to say, had 9 voting locations, and they consolidated it down to 1 as well.
1.
So yes, we have 104 square miles. We're a much larger community than these others. But again, going back to convenience, you can vote by mail, or during the course of the 2 weeks leading up to the election, you can always go to town hall and cast an early in-person ballot, which is what I do. And I love early in person.
Me too.
It's so
I
easy.
love it. People said there should have been a committee formed. Oh, please. What are we paying our professionals in town hall for? They get well paid. They work very hard, and they're very transparent. Kelly came before the selectmen. They had worked on it. They had worked on it with the selectmen. And what are you getting paid for?
Yeah, again, when I say we, the paid staff at Town Hall and the other departments are in these positions because they're well experienced. They've been doing this work for decades.
Yeah.
So for me, for example, I've been working in local government for 25 years. I know a little bit about local government, right? Kelly McKellar, 22 years. She's
Yeah.
been working in local government. The fire chief, police chief, those guys all have 30 years working in public safety. They are the professionals in their field, and their jobs are to look at best practices, look at the evolution of government in other cities and towns, and say, listen, I really like what that community is doing. We should try to bring that here because we can make improvements. If you look at our overarching goals for the select board's goals and priorities, one of them clearly states to make government more efficient.
Yep.
And we try to do that every day. Last night we talked about policies.
Yep, I love that. I really got a lot out of that. Don't ask me why. I just thought that was really neat to bring that attention to us. Talk about it.
So this idea I brought this to the select board back in 22 when I started. And I have to admit, I stole a page from Governor Charlie Baker.
Okay.
So I was appointed to serve on the Public Health Council, I think it was like a 2007 time period, I forget, by Deval Patrick. But then, so I served for a couple years under Deval Patrick, and then Charlie Baker became governor, and one of his first executive orders to all of the departments and all of the secretariats was they all had to review all of their regulations, their policies, and statutes. And what he was saying to all of them was, we have rules and regulations that are so antiquated that we need to either rescind them, we need to modify them or amend them, or just make them new. And so every month I go to the Public Health Council, and the first thing on the agenda usually was like 2 or 3 regulations brought to us by staff that say, hey, this policy, this regulation is outdated. We recommend you rescind it. A great example of this, I know I'm getting long-winded on this, but
Go ahead.
A great example they brought to us at the Public Health Council, there was a law that was passed in the early 1900s, you're gonna laugh, that prohibited feeding prisoners lobster more than 3 times a week.
Yummy.
Exactly, right? But because back then lobsters were considered, it was poor man's food.
Yeah.
And they would always give it to prisoners, and so they had to pass a law that you couldn't give it to prisoners more than 3 times a week. So here we are in 2010 thinking, geez, wouldn't we love to have lobster 3 times a week? But that was just an example of such an antiquated law that needed to come off the books. So then now I'm working here in 2022, and I said to the board, because I knew they were interested in the policies, that we have a goal that we will go through every policy and every bylaw and either rescind them if they're antiquated, amend them if they need some modifications, or just draft new policies. And so we've been doing this. We've been picking away at it the last couple of years.
Good.
So we probably, in totality, before last night, have updated about 26 policies. Some of them going back to the 1980s.
Wow.
But then a few weeks ago, Connor Anderson, who's our archivist, and Jade Anderton, who's the executive assistant to the select board, got together and they said, we're going to fast track this. So Connor goes back into the archives and goes back to the 70s of all the policies. And you heard last night, we had one policy in the books that said that the temperature inside town hall could not be less than 78
and it
degrees.
was. They were sweating to death. I remember.
It didn't make, some of these didn't
Windows
make any sense.
were wide open.
Yeah.
They were dying.
I don't even know why they would pass a policy like that. So Connor is now going through them with Jade, and they're going to fast track trying to get this done, hopefully by the end of this calendar year. And I have to say, it bothers me that this was neglected for decades. What are we doing as administrators if we're not ensuring that we have sound policies in place?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story. We met with a union head 2 years ago. We had to discipline one employee, and this union head pulls out a policy from 1997 that we were supposed to be using to discipline this employee. And he's like, oh, Derek, I called this phone number on the bottom of the policy, but nobody answered. And see this right here? That position doesn't exist anymore. And he had us in his crosshairs because we're trying to use a policy from 1997 to discipline an employee.
Nobody's home.
Right. It didn't make any sense. So policies matter because it's our guidance on how we operationalize government services.
How you run it and
That's
keep
right.
it well-oiled. Yes, I really got a lot out of that. And I know he only touched on it, you know.
Yeah, he's scratching the surface last
He
night.
just scratched the surface. And I said, that's very interesting. I like that, you know.
But that's all about making government more efficient, you know. And I sometimes, you know, we have a joke at town hall. You know, me and Sylvia, the assistant town manager, feels like we call ourselves the cleanup crew because there's so much that we have to do that was neglected for so long that we're like, all right, we're the cleanup crew. We're going to clean all this up, and you know, in 5, 6, 7 years from now, there's going to be another administration that's going to enjoy the fruits of our labor, right? So, another one that bothers me a lot is that, and I remember this when I was the assistant town manager. Every town meeting, we would transfer these parcels of land, you know, under the care and custody of either conservation or open space.
Yes.
And we did this 550 times. For whatever reason, there was never a restriction or an affidavit placed to ensure that these parcels will always be held in conservation. So here we are in 2025, cleanup crew, going to town meeting asking for $100,000 so that we can get enough money to take these 550 parcels, go to the registry deeds, and have them all recorded as conservation land. I can see why town meeting members, COPC, and others get frustrated. And I remember my first year here, they're saying, like, we need to know where all these articles, the status of them. Because they probably believed some of them weren't being closed out. And in some respects, there was some truth behind that. So we are ensuring that from beginning to end, we are carrying out the wishes of town meeting.
I know. Also, though, if too much land goes into conservation, where's our economic development? We need it.
It's an interesting topic because one of the questions that I was asked 3 years ago when I interviewed for this position was, you know, what can you tell us about economic development? What's your experience with expanding the commercial tax base? And to me, the obvious answer is, well, let's first focus on land that's already been developed and maybe it's being underutilized, right?
That's right.
So that's kind of where I focus my energy. Like if we have vacant storefronts, let's get businesses in those vacant storefronts, right? If we have
Industrial
land that's
park?
right, industrial park that we have vacant lots,
Yeah.
well, let's recruit businesses and get them to establish themselves versus going ahead and clear cutting
Yeah.
land.
We have a phone call.
We do, okay.
I wonder who it is. Hello, you're on Talk of the Town.
Hi, this is Peter in Cedarville.
Hey, Peter.
How are you? I just had a question for Derek. I'm at home here. I got the DVR on recording the show, and I was wondering, am I going to get charged with a felony for recording it?
Oh, no.
Not that I'm aware of, but go ahead and record right all the way.
Oh, that was, aw.
Yeah, I mean, he's going back on a comment when one of our selectmen found somebody recording.
I bet you he thinks he's just so cute.
Yeah, well, it's.
Go ahead.
I mean, if he wants to make a joke, it doesn't make any sense. But, you know, it's interesting, you know, and folks like that, they make comments because they don't understand the laws. And I wish people took time to understand how laws work and how government works.
They don't. I am so shocked, aren't you, that they don't know how government works. Now, an argument can be made, you don't like the way government works. Well, find out what you can do about it. A lot of people volunteer. Some people will pick. I was always the type who would pick up the phone and do something personally. Like if I had a beef with somebody at town hall, I would pick up the phone and very nicely say, can I come in and we have a little meeting. Sure,
That's right. It's that simple.
it's that simple.
It's that simple. You know, this Peter from Cedarville, I work in town hall Monday through Friday. If you have a question about how the law works around illegal taping, that happened 6 months ago, I think, at a select board meeting. He could have easily conned down and say, hey, I'd like to learn more about that, you know. So, but people, they don't take the time. Unfortunately, whatever they read, they take as truth.
Oh, don't get me
Which
started.
is another situation,
Yeah.
you know, especially when you go on social media, you know, people, whatever. It's unfortunate because if you go on social media, well, it doesn't matter what the platform is, there's so much misinformation that's out there. And most people who don't want to educate themselves take it as truth, and so, which is unfortunate.
I let it roll for a while, and then when I go in, it stops. I've noticed that because they know I'll just pound it to the floor.
But you educate yourself, you're engaged in what's happening in local government, and we have a lot of board and committee members that are engaged and they understand how it works. You know, the folks that don't understand or they don't want to understand how it works, they're not serving on our volunteer boards and committees, you know, and
Right.
that's unfortunate. But I can guarantee you, most of our board and committee members, you know, they're working with professional staff. They understand that the public sector is very different than the private sector. And so they have to understand open meeting law. They have to understand public records. And these are all the laws that we have to abide by.
You abide by, it's
Right.
mandatory.
Right. Yep.
You know, I mean, you're not out to hurt anybody. And it worked out. I mean, some people, you know, just can't get over things. But I also enjoyed the foundation's presentation. That was phenomenal.
Speaking of Cedarville,
Yeah.
the foundation was able to sell, it was about 32 acres of land on Hedges Pond Road.
And that's what they're supposed to do, right,
That's their
Derek?
job.
That's
yes.
their job.
Right. And there's a lot of large communities in Massachusetts that have foundation-like organizations because a foundation or a redevelopment authority, they aren't bound by certain laws like procurement laws and things of that nature. So they can pivot a lot easier than we can in local government. So it made a lot of sense in 2018 when town meeting voted to transfer these 30 acres of land under the care and custody of the selectmen so that the selectmen could then sell this property to the foundation for commercial growth, right? And then part of those negotiations at town meeting in 2018 was that another 135 acres of land would be preserved in conservation in perpetuity. So I wasn't at that town meeting, but when you look at it on the face, 30 acres of land went for commercial development, 130 acres of land went for preservation. So I think they were able to strike a balance of the folks that want to preserve land, but at the same time, folks that believe that commercial development is necessary. Every January, I go to Pine Hills, and I do more or less. It's like a state of the town type of presentation. You know?
To who?
It's mostly Pine Hills residents. It's at the
Okay.
Stonebridge Club. I do it every year. Done the last 3 years. I actually like going there. It's usually an hour long, but I'm usually there hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes because we have a really good dialogue. And every year taxes come up, but this past January, one person had complained about their taxes and said, we need to focus on more economic development, more commercial, light industrial growth. And I said, I agree with you. And quite frankly, the foundation agrees with you. The select board would agree with you. But let me tell you a story. And I try to explain the story about 71 Hedges Pond Road, that here is a piece of land that was specifically
Designated.
earmarked and designated for commercial growth. And then as soon as they get a developer who wants to develop it, people are questioning the decision that was made in 2018. So I feel like a lot of times when we get to the 3-yard line on some of these business prospects, folks get upset about it. So it's really hard to balance the folks that are advocating for commercial growth and economic development, and the folks who don't want to see any development. So it's difficult to strike that balance.
I know it is. I witnessed it. And they must be very rich because who's going to, we need economic development to offset our taxes. Smart economic development. We're not talking sprawl or, more retail.
Yeah, I mean, we have had lots of conversations with folks out of Boston who, like, say, for example, like who are linked to like Mass Bio, so for years people would want to talk about, well, we got to focus on life sciences. Life sciences is where you're going to get good economic development because, it's a educated workforce,
it's up and
higher
coming.
paying jobs, it's up and coming. And we've had those conversations in the past 10 years. And I can tell you right now, I've been told personally that we're too far away from Boston for real life sciences industry to come here. Because one thing life sciences industry wants is they want to be close to colleges and universities because that's their brain pool. And if you're an hour away, that's too far. So some of these things that folks think are opportunities really aren't when you start to get down into the weeds on this stuff. Our focus is going to be tourism today, it's going to be tourism tomorrow. For me, I think one area we haven't scratched the surface on is sports tourism. I think we have a huge opportunity with sports tourism, which is part of the reason why we're doing a master plan at Forges Field. We have 100+ acres of land, and this town has, for the last 10 years, probably again here, they'd build a field here, they put a patch over here, and what we're doing this year is everything's about planning. So we're master planning Forges Field. So instead of building another baseball field, we're taking a step back and saying, what do we want Forges Field to look like? All 150 acres. And we're never going to build it on day one, but we can say, well, in the next 5 years, we can build up this section. And then 5 years of that, we can build up this section. So, but at least we have a long-term vision. We just started a process at the 1,500 acres at Holtec. We're master planning the 1,500 acres at Holtec. Because there's all this great debate of what are we going to do with this land when Holtec decides to sell it? Well, let's not have that debate when they decide to sell it. Let's have a plan in place so when they decide to sell it, we're like, okay, the community came together and said, this is what they want the outcome to be at the Holtec 1,500 acres, whatever that is. So we're starting that planning process right now as well. So we're doing a lot of strategic planning, started last fall, and it's going to continue all through 2025.
What about AI?
I don't know enough about AI. I can tell you that we are using it more and more in our industry. We're seeing AI in some of our services that we're providing. But Steve Cole, he's the director of the foundation. He talks about AI-generated technology a lot and cutting-edge businesses that have either already started to work in Plymouth or he's recruiting to come to Plymouth. And a lot of them are focused on AI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True.
So there's a lot going on right now that it just takes a long time to develop, right? And so usually it'll be 3 or 4 years before you see the fruits of all of our labor in those conversations and negotiations.
I hope I'm around to see it.
You'll be around.
Now, we've had a lot of good things happen. The purchase of the Full Sail down in Manomet.
So we're working on its acquisition. We plan on talking about it next Tuesday with the select board.
Oh, that was
so this is
timely.
It's very timely. Yeah, this wasn't rehearsed. So we'll talk more about it next Tuesday with the board.
Great.
On the pursuit of the Full Sail properties.
And going by Bert's, I saw a big X, red X on it. I was happy to see it there. What does that signify?
Well, the red X basically, is a marking that's used by fire and buildings to let folks know that the building is unsafe.
Yes.
And I believe in this situation, if the building was on fire, it tells the firefighters not to go in the building. to basically suppress the fire from the
Excellent.
outside. So it's an unsafe building.
Such
We've had
an
conversations
eyesore.
with the Burt's property owners. There are things that they want to do over there. They want to tear down the structure and rebuild new, but the structure they're proposing is large, and so they're
Oh,
looking
I
for
think
some
I
support.
saw it. Wasn't it on stilts or something?
Yes, it is. It's built on piles, and it's a large structure.
Too large.
I think for all intents and purposes, it looks okay, but because it's so large, they need additional parking. So they're trying to work through the logistics on trying to secure additional parking in order to make this building.
So is this like a restaurant?
Yeah, they're proposing like a mixed-use building where
Oh,
there'd be,
mixed use.
yeah, there'd be some short-term rentals. There'd be a full-service restaurant, maybe some takeout restaurants there. So
If it's that
it's a good
big,
concept,
yeah,
but it's a big structure.
it's tall.
Yeah, it is tall. I want to say, including the first level, which would be on stilts for underground, underneath parking, it's like 4 stories. It's a big structure. Yeah.
That might not go. And your contract negotiation settlement went well?
With the unions,
Yeah.
I thought they went extremely well. So contracts expired June 30th of
Yep.
this past year, and we had agreed, I would say, by the middle of this fall with all unions, and that includes the school side as well, except one. So there's one union that was still trying to work through a few of the nuances, but yeah, contract negotiations I think went extremely well. Like I've reported in the past, the health insurance negotiations from 2 years ago, in my mind, was historic. We
Yeah.
saved the first year of health insurance negotiations. We saved $3.5 million.
Yeah. I know. Someone told me that. It was a great accomplishment. Question I get a lot is, school enrollment is down. Why does it cost so much?
I say this all the time, and I don't work in the school department, but this is my theory. Whether you have 18 students in a classroom or 22 students in a classroom, the costs are relatively the same. You still have to have a teacher, right?
A room,
Right, a room, heat, the materials is. You're not going to save money by not buying 5 pencils, right? So,
Yeah.
I always joke saying you're not going to balance a budget on pen and paper. So even though enrollment may be a little bit decreasing, the costs are still relatively the same. What is really driving some of the costs, and you know the answer, is
Yeah.
school transportation.
Yeah.
School transportation costs this town an obscene amount of money.
What can we do about that?
So this is the problem, in my opinion, about school transportation. If you're a regional school district, you get reimbursed, I think, 70% of your school transportation costs.
Ah.
And the state did that years ago because they were trying to incentivize municipalities to come together and build regional school districts because it's a more efficient way. It's like a 911 dispatch center. Why does every
Right.
city and town need to have their 911 dispatch center where 6 towns could get together and have one dispatch center and dispatch to all the towns, which is what they do across the country.
Right.
So they incentivize smaller municipalities to get together, and they said, if you do that, we will reimburse you 70% of your transportation.
70%.
That's a big number. But if you look at Plymouth, so we're not a regional school district, but we should be given the size of 104 square miles. You can put 5 Central Mass towns together, and it still wouldn't be the geographic size of Plymouth. And those 4 or 5 towns that get together are benefiting from being a regional school district.
What can we do?
So the school department's working on a couple of different things. I don't think we'll ever be a regional school district.
Oh.
But there are some ideas on ways to save costs on school transportation. So one of the problems that we all face is that when these school bus contracts go out to bid, there's monopolies that are created. and you're not getting the competition that you would expect. So you would normally expect, you put anything out to bid, that 3, 4, maybe
Yeah.
5 vendors bid on it.
Hopefully.
And then you choose the lowest bidder. But oftentimes what happens is you put out a bid for your school bus contract and one company bids. So you have to award it to them. And then they have these like side agreements like, hey, listen, if you don't bid in my neighborhood, I won't bid in your neighborhood. So they create these like mini monopolies.
Fiefdoms.
Right. So I know the school department, they're working on ideas. One idea, and again, they're still trying to do the analysis, is what would it cost us if we just bought our own school buses?
I was just thinking that.
Obviously, we would have a major upfront capital
cost.
investment.
Yeah.
But over the long term, you got to do the math in the long term. You know, with salaries and benefits and the maintenance of these buses, will you save money versus just outsourcing it? And so I think that's the analysis that they're looking at right now. But school transportation costs are not going down. They will continue to increase, and it hurts a community like Plymouth more than any other community because we have 104 square feet. We are the 4th largest road network in Massachusetts, behind Boston, Worcester, and Springfield. We're number 4. So we
Yeah.
have a lot of road miles to cover.
You know, we walked to school, and the school was 2 miles away. We walked, but, you know, it's kind of difficult. Parents don't drive them anymore. They're out to work.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, we're consolidating schools and we're getting away from the whole neighborhood school model, which really has been gone for decades now. But I know that, you know, talking to my dad, he used to walk home for lunch. He'd walk to school, and then he'd walk home for lunch, and then
We
he'd walk
did
back to
that
school.
too.
Yeah, so, you know, a lot of that is gone now, and, you know, there was a philosophy that let's consolidate these small neighborhood schools into one larger school, but then now you got to pay for transportation, you know, and then they can't walk home, so now you got to pay for their meals. I mean, there's a free lunch program. I believe all students in Massachusetts get,
I think it's breakfast.
Is it just breakfast? Yeah. So
I don't know if it's just breakfast, but I know they get breakfast.
I think it's lunch too.
Is it?
Yeah, I think
Good.
So when you go to school these days, it's not just the cost of educating the student. There's all the other costs and special education. Again, I'm not an educator, but talking to Dr. Campbell, special education is a major budget driver over at the school department.
Yeah.
And ESL services is something else that, you know, maybe 20, 25 years ago, it wasn't as much of a budget line item, but that is an increased budget line item as well. So it's not just, you know, paying your second grade teacher salary and benefits anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough.
I'll keep that in mind when I'm asked next time.
I have to say, though, the school department, the school committee, Dr. Chris Campbell, they did an amazing job this year on bringing their budget balanced. And I say that because, you know, my first 2 years here, my first year, we were laying people off. Both the school department and the town laid people off.
Yeah.
And then last year, there was a difference of opinion on the school budget, and there was some conflict with the town and the schools. And to the credit of Kevin Canny and our chairman, Dickie Quinto, getting together with Michelle Badger and other school committee members, Catherine Jackson, for example, we started meeting this last summer talking about the school budget, not in the town budget as well, but so that we were all rowing in the same direction. We understood what the revenues were, and we all committed, saying, listen, this is the revenues. This is no different than your own budget at home. You have to live within those means. The days are gone where you're going to go to a fall town meeting and ask for more money. There is no more money to ask for.
Yeah.
So we committed to giving 61% of the new revenue to the school department, and the town kept 39% of the revenue.
That freaked me out a little bit, but I get it.
What it did is it forced everyone to live within their means. And if you couldn't live within your means, well, then you had to make difficult decisions. I'll speak from the town side. When we looked at the 39%, and then all the departments submitted their budgets, we were over by $2.2 million. We were in the deficit $2.2 million. And so the finance department and myself and others, we had to go through the budget and we were able to cut, I believe it was like $1.9 million out of the budget.
Wow.
And so we still had a $300,000 deficit after making all the cuts. And so then I brought this idea to the finance department, our finance director. I said, let's institute this philosophy called a vacancy factor. And so we did. So we implemented vacancy factors across the board to our different departments, and it forces those department heads to be creative with how they manage their budgets. So they can't hire people on July 1st. Maybe they have to delay the hiring until September or January because they start the year off in a deficit. And they have to figure out a way to close that deficit in order to balance their budget. So that's it was a creative way of not laying people off.
That was genius.
And so I hope it works, and it empowers our department heads to have to manage their budgets differently.
Good.
And that's the goal. I don't micromanage. Like you said, we have professionals, well paid, who are experts in their trade. And so I empower them to do their work, and I support them. It's my job to make them successful, not the other way around.
That's wonderful philosophy. And of course, they come to you and tell you what's going on and how they did it and why.
Oh yeah, we meet every Tuesday as a team, and then I meet monthly with all our various department heads. We do check-ins, see how things are going, troubleshoot, and my other role is to be a voice of the select board. So I have 5 board members. They set the policy direction in this town. It's my job to execute it. And so if a department head comes to me and says, well, this is the problem I need help solving, what they hear come out of my mouth are 5 selectmen who all influence my thought process. And I use their philosophies and how to assist department heads be successful in their jobs, if that makes sense.
Well, you're very good at what you do, and they must love it because I think morale is up. Every time I go in there, I remember it was bad years ago.
Well, I don't get out as much as I should throughout the different departments, but I can tell you that Dick Quintal, our chairman, spends a lot of time in town hall. He spends a lot of time talking to the people in town hall. And he says to me often how he gets a lot of positive feedback on how the morale is up. And I'm like, well, that's good to hear.
Right.
I mean, I wish I could get out to the departments and talk to people more, but the day consumes you with everything that's going on. But it's good to get the feedback.
I love the sticker on, I was paying my taxes, and I love the sticker on the window, and I told the girl, I said, I like this because it said, we pay taxes too. And I liked that.
Right.
It's no need to yell at them. It's ridiculous. So
yeah, some of our staff, I mean, they all have difficult jobs because I've said that I think that overall we are understaffed across the board. So when I worked for the city of Worcester, my philosophy then was that we can always do more. Like, where the city manager called and saying, I need you to take this on, 100% of the time I was like, yep, we can do that. And I would always say to the staff, we can take on more, we can do more. And it wasn't until I got here that I realized that our staff is stretched. I mean, and I say this all the time, that we have 104 square miles to cover, and we have 130 firefighters. Worcester has 30 square miles to cover. They have 500 firefighters.
Jeepers.
So, I get it. Worcester has a bigger population. They have more call volume, but they're not traveling as far, right? They have 500 and we have 130. So, our fire department is stretched. Our police department, we got to do work over there because they oftentimes have like a rolling vacancy of 12 police officers. And when you have that many vacant police positions, that puts a strain on the existing police staff because now you're forcing them to come in overtime because you need coverage. If you talk to a veteran police officer, they will tell you they've never had July 3rd off, and they've never had the 4th of July off. Every one of them will say that because they're all forced to come in. I'm worried about our police department because they are at max capacity and they're strained.
I think we have one of the best police departments anywhere around. They're wonderful. The detectives, the policemen, the chief. I watch him. I saw him come up through the ranks. And he truly, he understands. He understands the town. He understands you. He understands the selectmen.
Chief Flynn, Dana Flynn, I have a lot of respect for. As you pointed out, he came through the ranks. He would say, he was a wharf rat when he was a young kid because he was a, assistant harbor master and then became a police officer. But the best thing about Dana is that not only he has the historical knowledge, but he understands that in order to have a 21st century police force, we have to continue to progress. We have to continue to make change at the police department. For the first time ever, we're going to have a deputy chief. We are implementing a new reorganization of the department that's going to include additional command staff. And some of it is triggered by the post requirements, but it's really the chief's vision to try to continue to evolve and focus on this community policing model.
Oh yeah, well, the town is growing bigger. He has to be ready for it. And the world is different.
It's very different. The things that Dana Flynn worries about today are very different than the chief 25 years ago.
That Mike had to worry about. I know.
Right. You know what the chief, one thing he says about, you know what prevents him from sleeping at night? He thinks about it all the time, what he calls a vehicle-borne attacks. He's been saying this to me for 3 years. He's so worried about vehicle-borne attacks. He said it's the #1 threat, domestic threat. And you think about
what's happened. That's
what's
exactly,
happened recently,
yes.
right? And you think about our 4th of July parade, our Thanksgiving dinner. We have major events. And the fact that he's so highly focused on this, it's been able to keep us safe.
Well, you know what it is, Derek? As big as we are, mile-wise, pavement-wise, we think of ourselves as a small town.
You do.
And we have a small town mentality. We don't think like, oh, we're big, and we think in villages.
You do, yeah.
That's how we think. And I think that could be half the problem half the time. But
well, I appreciate that because I'm not from Plymouth. So I come here with a different lens.
Sure.
Right? I've worked in the city. I grew up in the city.
Me too.
I worked in suburban rural communities. And when I left Plymouth, and I've said this before, I think even on the show, when I left Plymouth in 2017, I used to tell people about my experience in Plymouth. And I would say the problem with Plymouth, it's not how big it is that they have urban problems, they have suburban problems, and they have rural problems. So when you think about delivering services, you have very diverse demographics that you have to think about.
And the people that live in them.
Right, exactly. And if the people that live in them think about, oh, we're just a village, well, they're not recognizing that you're bigger than a village.
Right.
You're a very large population. Right, large population, 65,000 people year round, another 25,000 people come here during the summer. So you're pushing 90,000 people during the summer months. Talk about a stressor on our fire system, our police system, things of that nature. So there's a lot that's going on that, people like Peter from Cedarville doesn't realize all the things that we're contending with. And really,
Peter's not from Cedarville.
No, right. It's probably not even Peter. But the fact is, people they need to take a moment and think about everything that's happening in this community.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that's happening. And and why I got upset, I know we haven't touched upon it, but why I got upset with the media is because I appreciate this community probably as much as somebody who was born and raised in this community. I'm going to tell you why, because I was born and raised in the city of Worcester, and I didn't have the exposure to a community like Plymouth is. So I can appreciate how beautiful of a community Plymouth is. I can also appreciate, by going to work every day, the hard work the men and women that work for the town do every day.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when I see a story that I believe, in my opinion, is slanted, it upsets me. And I always
Me
say,
too.
it's my duty to ensure that the workforce is being represented in what's truly happening in this community. So I will always do that, and I don't apologize for what happened, because I know that the men and women that work every day are putting in more than 40 hours a week, and they care. They're not getting the best salary. They could probably work in the private sector and make more money, but they do it. Oftentimes it's because they love working for the town. And I mean, I love working for the town, and I'm not even from this town.
Right. Some of them have been there for a long time. They love it. And they're cheery. I'm telling you, Derek, you should get around a little bit and some of the pop in. They are cheery. You go in and they have a smile. May I help you? You know, it's not like it was before. They were so downtrodden. They were, I mean, before you, way before you.
Right. Yeah, and that's no way to go to work every day. So I have to say, you know, our HR department has changed over the last 3 years, and, you know, they not only are responsible for the health and welfare of our employees, but part of what they do is try to, you know, boost morale. And so we have a committee now that has done some morale lifting events,
Good.
like cookie swaps for Christmas, and
I love what they do at Halloween.
the Halloween event. Yeah,
The Halloween event, they're into it.
The people, and they're not only into it, but now everyone in the community is expecting Town Hall to show out on Halloween with all, you know, decorating their offices. And so I'm sure there's some people saying, well, that's my taxpayers' dollars. Listen, let these people have fun for a couple hours a year. Like,
Listen to
you know,
me, Derek.
You're not losing anything.
You've done wonderful. The Christmas decorations with the help of the VSB.
That's right. Yeah, great.
And you allowing it. It wasn't allowed before. And you're allowing that festivity to go forward. People want to do family things. They come out as a family. And, you know, you're not the type to say, don't touch the green, don't walk on the, you know, we are a family.
Well, I agree. And so when I came back in 22, to me, Town Hall was this brick structure in the middle of our downtown that was disconnected to all of the life that was happening downtown. And so, and I heard it from, I mean, it wasn't my idea. I heard it from a lot of people. I heard from the businesses. And we said, well, we are one of the businesses downtown, along with the restaurants and the retail shops. We are a business. So we should be participating in the Chamber of Commerce Halloween event.
Easter,
we should be
whatever.
participating in, you know, the tree lighting event.
The stroll, whatever
exactly.
it is.
And so I hope that we are now considered one of the businesses that are downtown, and that when families think about trick-or-treating on Court Street, they're like, oh, we can't wait to get to Town Hall.
We have to get to the Town Hall because you have the best candy. And who donates all that candy? It's Dickie.
Mr. Quinto.
Yes.
Yes. That guy's got a heart of gold.
Oh my God, he always has, Derek.
He always steps up when, I mean, yeah, he donates the candy for Halloween so we can pass that out. But you've seen it more than I have. Anytime there's a family in need, if there's a fire, he's the first one in line helping them out.
First
all the time.
one there. He has always been that way since he first started years ago. He bought some beautiful paintings for the old town hall. Nobody was stepping up, so he bought them and he gave them to the town hall.
He drove on a snowy night once down to the DPW and he bought them one of the coffee makers because he was told that they didn't have coffee. So instead of buying them 2 Boxer Joes, he actually bought them an entire coffie maker.
Yeah,
the big one, the big
something
urn. So that they,
permanent.
yeah, exactly.
That's who he is.
That's right. That's why I really, I like working with this board. This board is great, but in particular, that Dickie's the chairman. Him and I talk every day. I usually give him a briefing of everything that's happening,
Yeah.
and he's in tune to everything that's going on. Usually before I finish my sentence, he's finishing it for me.
Yeah, he
And
does
I say
that
him,
to
like,
me
Dickie,
too.
how do you know that?
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, how do you know that?
He knows it.
Yeah. And he'll always catch me.
He's
like,
got everybody everywhere.
yeah. He always, he'll say something back in kind of like, he's like, you stick with me, I'll teach you a few things. So he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
For a guy who has his own business, he knows exactly what's happening at Town Hall.
Oh, I know. I don't know how he does it because his business needs him there to do certain things, and then he has his mother that he makes sure he takes care of.
That's right, in Tennessee.
Yeah, he's just a wonderful guy. I've always loved him. Even when I ran against him years and years ago, there were 9 of us running, and he was one. WATD always had a catch question. So, of course, they turn to me, and they say, out of all these people, Karen, who would you vote for?
Ooh,
You know, okay.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
They're deadly. They were dead. I turned, I looked at Dickie, and he fell on the floor. And I said, Dick Quintal. I've always loved him. I just think he's a sincere, honest, true guy. You want to know where you stand?
Yep. He'll tell you.
Yeah, last night I loved it when he banged that gavel.
He's been doing it long enough. He sees the flow of a meeting, so he knows when to let it flow or when to stop it.
Oh, he's always very kind, but I mean, that was over the top, very insulting.
Yeah, I know that folks are worried about the project down in Cedarville, Hedges Pond Road, but there's this group that continues to advocate for the selectmen to rescind the building permit that was issued by the building commission. And I said the last 2 weeks, twice, I said, that's not within their purview. They don't have that authority to do that. I mean, could you imagine if the select board ever got in the middle of issuing building permits and who not to get building permits to and who's going to get building permits?
It's always been great because the selectmen have never stepped on the planning board's toes.
That's right.
And vice versa. They know their lane,
The planning board approved that project. The building permit was issued by the building commissioner. If someone feels aggrieved, there's an appeal process, and that appeal process is to the ZBA. So it's not like there's not a way to appeal any type of project. There is a process to do that. The process isn't through the select board, though. They don't have any authority to do that. So.
But I know, Derek, there are people in this town that want it to look like 1620. And, I don't get it.
Yeah, when people talk about, well, they want a new building downtown to have the historical look. I always say, what history? You want the 18th century, the 17th century? What history are you referring to? Because it changes. In 100 years from now, people are going to say, oh, geez, I wish this building looked like the 21st century.
You're terrific. I thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm
Sorry
happy.
it took me so long to get here.
No, are you kidding? I'm happy that you're healthy. And you're welcome here anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.